Robert, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you on today. How are you?
Thank you very much, Aaron. I'm great. Thanks for having me.
I always like to go back to the start. Can you remember your first experience with the horror genre, and maybe just to broaden that a little bit, maybe film in particular, in any genre?
Well, my first experience with horror was when I was a kid, and I would stay up. We had a thing on Friday nights, Friday night creature feature, and there was all the old classics: the Bela Lugosi, the Boris Karloff, Frankenstein, Dracula, and so I would watch those when I was a kid. And my first professional experience with horror was, of course, Psycho Cop.
Do you think there's a place for? I've had a lot of conversations recently with filmmakers, actors, creatives, and people always harken back to, those old school kind of horror host shows and things like that that would play
Yeah.
movies and different episodes from anthology TV shows. And do you think there's a place? I know Joe Bob still has his thing with Shudder and different places like that, but
Right.
do you think there's a place for that nowadays? Because I feel like the more people I talk to, people always mention that stuff, and I'm like, surely there's got to be an open market there for that still.
Oh, they still play. I mean, the scares have never changed. Scary is, those films were scary, and the true horror. I characterize a lot of modern horror as gore porn because it's about killing and the blood and all of that. But real scares are, for me, I always harken back to The Exorcist and The Omen and those types of films where it's true psychological terror, where there's demonic power at play, supernatural, as opposed to, serial killers. Yes, so those films will always play because they're classics. I mean, um, my very first film was in a little comedy called The Rosebud Beach Hotel. And I found myself in my second scene standing across from the great Christopher Lee, who did the Hammer English films, Dracula. And man, was he great. And so it was intimidating. There's Christopher Lee, Sir Christopher Lee. Oh, sorry, that's my computer talking for some reason.
You're fine. It's all good.
But he's a very imposing man. He was as tall as I am, and he was so regal and carried himself with such assurance. I mean, he was a special forces soldier in World War II. I mean, he was the real deal. So I got to spend time talking to him, and I was a little bit of a fanboy. I couldn't help it. It's Christopher Lee, but those kind of guys, Boris Karloff and Vincent Price and Christopher Lee, really informed how I wanted to attack the role of Psycho Cop. Um, I've always called it Joe Vickers, Officer Joe Vickers, um, had what I like to call malevolent glee. He loved his work, as unholy
Hmm.
unholy as it was, and those guys had that same sort of panache that they relished their evil, and so that's what I tried to bring to it. That same sense of fun, that the character knows that he's wicked, but he delights in it anyway.
In those situations, you mentioned working alongside of somebody like Christopher Lee and things like that, and I was going to ask, about acting. Was that always something that from a very early age you wanted to do? And then I guess to kind of further that question based off the Christopher Lee story, um, it, it was I don't know if I want to call it imposter syndrome. A lot of people use that term, but the idea of knowing what you want to do and having the skill to do it, but then maybe being in some of those positions, you get a lead role in a movie, you're working alongside somebody like Christopher Lee. Is it, at least back then, was it difficult to kind of you have a place there, but then it's also like, goddamn, this is Christopher Lee, and kind of maybe, I don't know, nerves set in.
Well, the first part of your question, no, I did not ever want to be an actor. I sort of stumbled into it when I was 23 years old. I had never done any acting. I was a basketball player and I was working as a model and I fell in love with an actress and I started going to her movie sets and I realized, well, I could do this. And so I went to school for 3 years and learned how to be a Stanislavski method actor. And so, uh, when I got the first role, um, I was very confident. I never suffered from a lack of confidence in my ability because I was trained and, I was self-assured and, you know, that's what it takes really, is that undying belief in your own powers. I mean, there's certainly times when you're you question it, that's the nature of the art is being unsure. uh, One thing I tell uh, young actors when I speak with them is acting is really about the absence of ego. You have to get rid of your own ego. You can't be worrying about how you look or how people are responding. You have to be it. And so I've always been a very old school, as I said, method actor. And so if you don't have confidence, the editor is not going to choose your take. So that's essentially what you're trying to do is get the editor to, when he's watching the dailies or the film, but now it's video, uh, to choose your close up. So you have to be doing something interesting. You have to have an inner life. You can't just be posing. Great actors is, you know, you can't hide. There's good actors and there's bad actors, like anything else. As you say out on the pitch, there's good players and there's bad players, right? I mean, there's great ones and there's all levels. So I was always striving to be the best I could be and not worry about the externals.
That boils down to a lot of people reach out to me, when they find out a certain person is going to be on the show with all these questions surrounding, like I mentioned, imposter syndrome. I see that coming up quite a lot with people. Another one I see coming up is dealing with, uh, you know, maybe it's changed a little bit now, but I feel like, especially in Ireland and the UK, maybe more so than the States and Canada and places like that, we're a little bit behind in the sense of, it's very, finish school, go to college, just get a desk job or get a, some sort of a trade, whether it be a plumber or carpenter or something like that. And then when people say, I'm going to be a movie director, I'm going to be a screenwriter, I'm going to be an actor, people kind of go, yeah, yeah, okay. And then when you wake up, what are you actually going to be? And people seem to struggle with maybe loved ones, close family, friends. Some of them don't even realize, maybe they think they're protecting you by saying, like, don't do that, don't think that you can be an actor, or don't think you can be a director. um did you ever deal with that, and if so, how would you, I guess, respond or try to, like, not allow that to define what you want to do?
Well, if you can be talked out of your dream, then the dream wasn't strong enough to begin with. Okay. No, no, no one ever, I mean, people always said, oh, you'll never make it or this won't happen. But if once you're in the fight, you're in the fight. I mean, I've seen plenty of people who thought they were ready for the fight, but they weren't, and they quit. And they fell by the wayside. I mean, there were people in my classes when I was a young actor. They had the dream, but they didn't have the wherewithal. They didn't have the staying power. They didn't do the work. It's all about the work. If you're willing to do the work, which means in acting, especially, you have to, if you want to conquer Hollywood or Broadway or anywhere that you get in front of a camera uh, or in front of an audience, you can't have fear. I mean, you always have it right before you go on stage, right? Oh my God, am I going to remember my lines? What happens here? What happens there? But that's temporary. That's only for the moment. No, it's you have to be willing to forsake everything else and just be totally dedicated to the vision and the craft. And then get to work and stay working.
Would you say, obviously, I know skill and talent has to come into it, but would you say that's probably the number one takeaway is like a lot of people are not able to stay the course, and the idea of it being, I've had it referred to me a lot of times as, it's the 10-year overnight success. Everybody sees if something kind of pops off and they say, "Oh, wow, Robert, great, amazing. I can't believe you're so lucky." And it's like, I've been putting in the work for the last decade, 2 decades.
Yeah, no, it's an overnight success 15 years later. But the thing about it is, all along the way, along the road, you you achieve victories, and you think, okay, this is it, I've done it, and then you realize it's a roller coaster. The ride is going down and it's coming back up. The roller coaster never stay. People on the roller coaster never stay at the top the whole time, right? It's going to dip and ebb and flow. So it's not a career, it's a life. uh Again, the dedication to it, like I said, forsaking all others, you're really a slave to it. I've retired a couple of years ago, so I don't have that um in my life anymore, and I was consumed by it for 40 years. I lived in Hollywood, LA, and now that I'm not there anymore, all the things surrounding it. I mean, every day was about getting up and getting after it and trying to make it happen. And victories and defeats. I mean, that's life itself. So same thing applies to the profession.
Was it difficult without, obviously, getting extremely personal or anything? But I have also heard people mention the struggle with, I suppose, living in reality. Like when you're so fixated on a dream, and then maybe you have a partner, maybe you have kids with somebody or something like that, and then people seem to struggle with, I can't distinguish between the professional and the creative version of me, and then being able to switch that off and, like, tend to a partner, or if you have a wife or things like that, it becomes like a bigger struggle.
Well, it is difficult. I mean, if you look at the children of Hollywood actors, very successful ones. I mean, take for instance the Fonda family. You know, great actors, the whole family, and especially dad. But his children who became actors, um, they struggled with his parenting because he was always away, or when he was home, he wasn't as attentive as he wanted to be. I once had drinks with Peter Fonda at a little club in Santa Monica, and he was telling me, he said, Robert, every time that my dad finished a film, he thought he'd never work again. And I'm like, Henry Fonda,
Mm,
Henry
yeah.
Fonda, that Henry Fonda, the great Henry Fonda. So all actors suffer from that. So the insecurity is built into the system because there's, like I said, uh, one bad movie can ruin the whole deal, or if you have a bad attitude. I mean, we've been dealing with the loss of Val Kilmer, who was a very good
Mhm.
actor, and he bucked the system. And of course, he was also known as a pain in the ass he was demanding, but when you're at that level, you're also you want people to respect the art. I mean, there's a very famous audio tape of Christian Bale working on a set, and he loses his temper because people are walking around while he's working, and he goes on a 5 minute rant. I don't know if you've heard it.
Yep, I surely have.
Well, he's screaming, and he's telling people, he's very graphic. And I've always agreed with that. When I found people trying to interrupt the process, it's obviously a collaborative medium. It takes 100 people to make it, right? Can't do it without any department. You got to have them all, and they all need to be first rate. So, but the moment of truth is when they say action, and the goods must be delivered then. So the trick for the actor is to be able to block out everything that's happening around them. Getting the set ready, getting the lights ready, getting the wardrobe ready, getting the makeup ready, getting the props ready. you're involved in that, but you're also still trying to maintain your focus because in a minute they're going to go action, and that's when you have to deliver the goods.
It was pretty early on, right, in your career. Well, from a, I don't know, from a feature standpoint, when you came across Psycho Cop, which I know, like, I would imagine you've probably had these conversations a million times by now. So I try to be a little bit different. But when uh when you first read the script, or I don't know how that came about specifically, but what was your reaction to, I guess, the character and just the overall tone of that movie?
It's a funny story. I submitted myself every week. A publication came out called Backstage Weekly, and that would be the casting notices for the week. And so I read that religiously, as every beginning actor does. I had 2 or 3 film credits and a couple TV credits, and I was working on the stage. And I put my 8x10 in an envelope, took it to the post office, waited a few days, and then I got a call for the audition. Well, the audition was at the director's house in the Fairfax district in LA, which is fortunately just a few miles from where I live. So I was happy about that. But when I got to the audition, there was like 10 guys already there waiting in the living room. And we were reading not the script, but a famous Sam Shepard play called True West. And so I knew this play. I had been working on it in my class. I loved this play. It was done by Ed Harris and Randy and Dennis Quaid and Philip Seymour Hoffman and John C. Riley. And so, it was a test, this play. Sam Shepard was a great writer, and as well as being a great actor. And so I had a big advantage because I knew it, and it's a very difficult play to do or just cold read, which is what all the other actors in front of me were doing. So uh, it was in his house, like I said, so you could hear every actor just in the audition butchering it because it's, like I said, very difficult to do. So I was sitting there going, "Oh man, I'm going to kill this thing," and I did. And I knew immediately that I had got the part, which is rare. You normally they keep you guessing, they don't show anything, but I could tell that he wanted me. And a couple days later, they made the offer. And then when I read the script, I really got to work on it. And I like I said, I'm an old school method actor, so I was building the character. I was buying books on demonology and Satanism, and I was learning cop stuff, and I had probably 3 months to prepare the role because the money was there, then it wasn't there, and so the funny story, Aaron, was the producer and the director said to me, Bobby, maybe you should go rent the costume and go over to the executive producer's office in Beverly Hills and see if you can get the money. So I did. I rented the costume, and this jackboot and the black leather jacket and the whole bit, the police outfit with the fake gun. And I just showed up in unannounced at Cassian Elways' office at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon in Beverly Hills, and he didn't know I was coming. And he's looking at me like, "What are you doing here?" And so I went into his office and acted psycho and tough and crazy for about a half an hour, and finally he looked at me and he said, "Okay, we'll make it." So a couple of weeks later, we were in pre-production, and as I say, the rest is history.
Is that unusual to, especially for a, a movie like this it's a horror movie? I would, I don't know if I call it a straight slasher because I think there's a lot of other elements that are there.
Sure.
But for them to, in the audition process, to have you, or to try and, I don't know, surprise the auditionees with something like cold reading that versus, you going in and being like, wait, I thought we were just going to maybe read lines from the script and now you're hitting me with this.
Well, it depends on the script. I mean, if the in Psycho Cop, the villain Joe Vickers, he doesn't drive really the movie. He appears in the movie. He's not, it was
Yeah.
all the six kids who were the protagonists. They probably read from the script because there was enough material there. But Psycho Cop's mostly one-liners, so you can't really string those together. And he wanted to see a full acting scene to see whether you could deliver, intense material. And so both ways, usually you're reading from the script or, the material, but I've been many a time where they've had something else, just to test you. And of course, after amount of time, people know you or know your work or have seen it, so it's less about, proving can you do it as opposed to can you do what we need.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. The character definitely has like this bizarre kind of sense of humor, this morbid kind of I don't know how to explain it exactly, but there's a lot of memorable one-liners in there. Did you have any creative input on the dialogue, or was it kind of given to you and then it was up to you how you would deliver it?
It's always up to me how I deliver it, but they'll give you suggestions. I mean, on the first one, Wallace Potts, a lot of that film, we did a, a voiceover in ADR where he kept wanting me to make it sound more robotic, which was a confusing direction for me. I didn't really wanted to be robotic. I wanted to maintain the comedy that, because I've always felt like this is a comedy, as opposed to a horror film. So it's funny about the one-liners in Psycho Cop Returns, the second one. It's often been said that that character has more one-liners than all of Arnold Schwarzenegger's movies, which every line out of his mouth is a quip, I mean, pretty much, which I really enjoy doing. It's a good way. The thing about being a psychopath is that you have to be able to turn it on and off. You don't run around. In other words, a band or an orchestra does not play at crescendo the whole time, right? They build up to the crescendo, then they come down, they build up. That's what a psychopath has to do, but you have to see the switch where he clicks into the crazy, right? So that's really what I was trying to be able to do. Uh, but no, I'm not really interested in a whole lot of direction. I make my choices, and then if there's something they feel is wrong, they'll tell me. But typically, my first instincts are pretty good
You
because
mentioned
I've done the work. I've done the, I've built the character. I've created it before I come in. I don't come in going, tell me what to do. I work with plenty of actors that have done that, and that always annoyed me. Is they're so needy with the director. Oh, is this a good choice? No, no. I always make my choices, and if you want to alter them, then we can talk about it. You know.
yeah,
But
because you mentioned having 3 months to kind of prepare for the whole
yeah,
thing, and it just kind of it came into my head. Then did you create like a, I don't know, maybe a backstory in your own head? Did you make up your own lore, about who you felt like Joe Vickers was behind all that? Maybe stuff that the audience didn't get to see.
sure. I mean, that's how First of all, I'm in the gym every day. I had this personal trainer who was killing me, but I was working out really hard, getting as
Uh-huh.
big and as I could get because I wanted to be imposing. And also, when I was shooting it, I wasn't palling around with the victims. I would say hi to them, and I wasn't spending time with the other actors. Even at lunch and dinner, I would be by myself because I felt, you know, he's not their friend. He's there to
Yeah.
kill them, so palling around with everybody. I mean, it's kind of like modern sports teams in the NBA, for instance. They're all pals, but back in the 80s and 90s, these guys hated each other because they were fighting for the same thing. So I don't want to be friends with, when I'm there to kill you.
Yeah, that makes sense. You mentioned Psycho Cop Returns, and I do want to get to that at some point. But I'd also seen somewhere that you said something about there was a five picture deal initially.
Yeah.
Am I right in
Yes.
saying that?
Yes, you are.
Is that from the out? Was that from the outset? That was always the intention.
Yes. Well, but the thinking there, I didn't really want to sign that contract because I was hoping it would be a big hit and I could renegotiate it, as we went along. The producer was making sure that he didn't overpay, he didn't have to pay more. It was purely for his benefit. But the numbers were pretty good. It was 1.2 million. I remember the day I signed it. I was happy. I was thrilled. I thought, I'm the next Freddy Krueger. I'm going to be this is going to be as big as Nightmare on Elm Street and Halloween and Friday the 13th, etc. And it didn't happen that way. So we only made two of them, but there is a third script right here on my computer that I wrote, and so I think we're talking in talks now about making a third one.
Because I feel like it's something that's it's probably going to get asked a million times until something is announced. But in your opinion, why do you think? Because now, if you look at it, right, these movies have year on year, and I'm sure you've experienced this more than anybody, have just gained a bigger and bigger and bigger cult following. There's German media books, there's Spanish media books, there's Australian media books, there's all these different re-releases and new artwork and new this and new that, and people talking about it. Why do you think at the time it didn't resonate as well? Because when I look at it now, I go, wow, that fits perfectly into the era. Like even in the first movie, when you're introduced to him after 10, 15 minutes, I feel like, oh, this guy is already established, even though I don't know anything about the character. He already feels like one of those villains that could sit on that Mount Rushmore with the other characters.
Well, thank you for that. I made a list of the 13 best horror villains, and I was on it with Vincent Price and Christopher Lee, so I was thrilled. I think it is amazing that it's had the staying power that it had or has. I looked it. They're online. I mean, they're on you. Both of them are on YouTube, and all the comments I read this morning, are recent. They're new, younger generations discovering it. I think it's appealing because we live in a sort of a police world, with crazy cops, stepping on people's rights and all of that. Um, which I really hate that, but um, I think it. Well, we get back to the thing that I always found interesting was that people. I've had countless people say, "Oh man, when I was a kid, I watched it on Cinemax, and I was so scared. It was so scary." And I was thinking, I was playing it for laughs, for one thing, but the presence of this, the badge, the authority that the badge gives, inherently. And when I first was wearing the costume, I realized how the the gun on your hip changes the way you walk, the way you talk, the way you deal with people. You could pull that gun out and end somebody's life right there and then, and possibly not even be punished for it, right? Because you're operating under the badge. So that seems to me to be inherently evil.
Yeah.
So I think that's why it has the resonance that it has, and the new script that I wrote is called Hip Hop Psycho Cop, and it's told from Joe's point of view. So
Oh.
it changes because the first two are told from the point of view of the victims, and this one is Joe going to work, and we follow Joe, and he's taking iPhone calls from Satan. So
How long have you had uh that idea knocking around in your head for?
well, I wrote it probably 4 years ago, and I've been asked many times, did I want to do another one? And I kept saying no. I've already done it. There's no reason. The executive producer and I aren't exactly the friendliest, and although I'm willing to work with him again because he still owns the rights. So I can't do anything without him. So any deal that I make has to be made through him. So we'll see if he's willing to play along or wants to produce, or, if we have to buy the rights. I mean, so there's many ways I can finance the film, and, have people that want to do it. So we're rapidly approaching the moment of truth. And truthfully, I'm older now, um, so I need to do it before it's too late to do it. So I want to still be able to run and fight and do all the things that you have to do in that part.
Why now? Like you mentioned writing the script around 4 years ago ish. Why did that feel like the right time for you? And are you surprised that the executive producer or wherever the rights lie, that they haven't tried to do something with this? Because I do feel, and I did write down in my notes that it's one of those characters I think that I don't know if people will get behind it if you don't play Joe.
Well, here's the reason I wrote it, Aaron, is there was an actor, a young actor, who said that he wanted to remake it. He wanted to that was his goal, was to remake Psycho Cop. And at the time, they had just replaced Robert England as Freddy. And I thought, why? He's Robert England's still alive, and the guy they
Yep.
chose uh, is about the same age, Jackie Haley. And so that kind of made me feel territorial and proprietary with it. That's mine. I don't want anybody else to do it. It'd be like Yul Brynner when he was doing The King and I. He didn't want anybody else to be the king. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
He played the king for thousands of performances, and then finally he quit and he said, I'm never going to do it again. And then 10 years later he was back doing it again. So I think we all feel that ownership of a part. And I can't see anybody else doing it. But if I was going to do the third one, uh the fourth one I would write, and I would call it Son of Psycho Cop, and then I would give the part away to a younger guy to play it, because you really need a guy in his 30s, to kick ass. I mean, that's, when you're in your fighting prime. So that guy has to be, kicking butt.
Do you already have a potential idea for Son of Psycho Cop if we do see that?
Well, I would pretty much follow, like Son of Frankenstein, something like that. I mean, it's the same character, it's just younger, and he talks to dad. I mean, he'd be doing the same things that Joe Vickers does. You'd call him Joey or Joe Jr., something
Hmm.
stupid. But yeah, I mean, we the new conceit in the Psycho Cop 3, Hip Hop Psycho Cop, is that Satan gives Joe a list of people who've been sent to hell, and it's Joe's job to send them there, right? And they're all guilty of something. They're not innocent teens. They're rappers and radio executives and hookers and drug dealers. So they're all guilty. And so when he takes them down, he reminds them of their crimes and why they're being sent straight to hell.
I can't help but think that people would be super behind that. So what can you see as you said it's kind of getting down to, I suppose, crunch time with having conversations and actively pushing this thing forward. Um what could you see as being the only roadblock is just the idea of the rights, is it?
Yeah, I mean, and that's really probably me just making a phone call or writing a letter. And so I'm at that point where it's time to make it happen or not. And, or maybe just sell the script. But like you said, I really, it's my baby. It's always been my baby. And I'd like to, it deserves to have a trilogy at least. I mean, one more to close the deal. And as I said, I really wanted it to be more in the old horror, the supernatural you know. Although Satan, you hire a great voice actor, if James Earl Jones was still alive, or somebody like Morgan Freeman, you'd pay big money to get a great voice, a recognizable voice, to play that role, because you never see him, right? He's just on the phone. But
It's
it's
I don't know. I just already I'm picturing how fantastic of like if that's all we got was like the the trilogy, the end cap after all these years,
yeah,
kind of finish it out and it be your kind of like I don't know, nod to the character and then being able to have because another thing I don't know if you noticed, but physical copies of these movies are very hard to come by. It is quite a rare set of movies. I have tried several times. So I'm an avid physical media guy,
yeah, me
and
too.
I have tried several times to get certain. I'm one of those sticklers where if I like something, I'm like, I want that version. I want the one that was released in this region. They're
Yeah.
actually quite hard to come by.
Well, especially number one. Number two returns. There was a Blu-ray release. The film was restored by Vinegar Syndrome, which is very good company. Uh, and they told me that they were going to do number one. I don't know what happened. Maybe they couldn't get the rights. I don't know. I haven't talked to them, but it should be re-released. I mean, the when it came out on VHS, which that was always in that era. It was always a year after the film was finished that the VHS came out. And so we shipped 25,000 units, which, every one of those cost $100 in those days. I mean, the store, the rental store, they had to pay $100 to get it. So, it was a financial success for the producers. And so, I don't know why, but I know people do bootlegs, and there's, edited versions, and Joe Bob's played it for years, and there's those versions. um, so it does need a Blu-ray release. The the great story, Aaron, is that when the Blu-ray came out for Psycho Cop Returns, Adam Rifkin, the director,
Uh-huh.
and there was a screening of it in Hollywood at a very nice screening room that we packed. And so again, this film was made in 1993, and we're talking about 2010 or whenever that. I don't know when that came out, uh, but it was packed, and that was the first time that we'd ever watched the film with an audience, and it held up. It didn't feel like it was an old 80s slasher or anything. All the jokes played, all the scares were in it. The screen, I mean, after the screening was over, a producer came up to me and goes, "Oh my God, we should be working on Psycho Cop 3. This was great." And I'm like, "It's already done. I'll send you the script." There was also a great moment before the film. Adam introduced me to William Lustig, who you may know
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
the
I've had
creator
him
of
on the show.
Maniac Cop, right?
Yep.
So he says, "Bobby, this is William Lustig, Maniac Cop," and I said, "Oh, it was a pleasure to meet you, sir. For the last 25 years, people have been coming up to me and asking me who would win in a fight, Maniac Cop or Psycho Cop." And Lustig looks at me and goes, "Well," I said, "you're looking at him."
And that's something I don't know if you noticed, but like there's a lot of fans out there who always brought that up. They were like, why did we never
Sure.
see Maniac Cop versus Psycho Cop? It seems like the perfect thing that we could have done, the crossover.
Yeah.
Uh when the first one comes out, you mentioned, 25,000 units
Yeah.
on tape, which is like, back then it's like pretty colossal money. So it done really well. Was it instantly after that? Did the producers or the powers that be realize, okay, yeah, we're going straight to do Psycho Cop Returns?
No, it was 3 years later. And that was a rough period for me because I had envisioned that I had, this $1.2 million contract. I'd gone to the Cannes Film Festival to promote the film, and just had a terrific 2 weeks in Cannes. Uh, you know, a big, huge poster on the Carlton Terrace where everybody went to have drinks. And I would sit right by my poster, and although France, I don't know if you've been to France, it's an interesting place. I mean, they really hated Americans,
Yeah,
especially during the,
they can be quite rude as well.
oh yeah, especially during the film festival. Um, and also, the one thing I really hated is they don't use much ice there. I like ice when I have my bourbon,
Yeah.
but I had a great time, and it was a high, and then I sank right down into a low because the film sort of disappeared. There was the distributor of the film, the first one, they also represented Maniac Cop, so they kind of buried Psycho Cop because Maniac Cop was their more lucrative title to them. In fact, there was a big headline in the Hollywood Reporter and Variety: Maniac sues Psycho Cop because they accused us of stealing their artwork. And they were very similar, the first posters. So, those are things that you can't control. I mean, how the distributor treats it after you've delivered the product is, no no actor has any control over that situation.
And I suppose when did conversations heat back up then? Like you mentioned, it was what, three
Well,
years?
it was 3 years. It was I just got a call. Um, they said, "Are you come and meet the director and the writer, and we're going to start shooting." And so Rifkin and I met at a very famous Hollywood watering hole called the Formosa, which had been there for since the 40s. I mean, the place was uh, red, leather booths and dark. I mean, and the walls were all covered with Hollywood 8x10s from the golden era of Hollywood, and it was a great place to hang out and feel connected to old Hollywood, which I've always been a fan of. That era, the studio, when the studios had actors under contract. I mean, that completely is different now because it's all freelance. I mean, there's no long-term contracts where you're going to do this many pictures and you come up, slowly building your way up. I mean, I watched a little movie from 1936 yesterday, and Betty Davis was, 10th build. I mean, so
Yeah.
she started out, down at the bottom, and that's the way it was then, because uh, it also wasn't that great for the actors, but it also gave you a bit of security. You didn't have to go out and wait tables and bartend and do all the staying alive jobs that I had to do between films.
Yeah, and I think that's another thing that's probably lost on a lot of fans of, some of your work and something like this in particular. Uh we like to imagine, you play Joe in Psycho Cop and you mentioned, you're in Cannes, everything is great, and then you just like sitting in a $1 million mansion and you just chill out till the next phone call.
No, it was a $600 a month apartment in Melrose and La Brea, and I was bartending, 5 nights a week to keep a roof over my head. But this is a thing for young actors, is that you have to keep you until you're making a lot of money. You have to keep the business going, and so everything that you make in your day job, whatever that might be, uh, is invested back into your business. The business is you. You are the product. You have to sell it. You have to audition. You have to do stage work. You have to keep hustling all the time, and instead of say you make a few $1,000s, you can't live off that very long in LA. I mean, money goes fast in LA. LA is a very expensive place to live, so you got to it's constantly have to have money coming in. And that's not always as a professional actor.
Yeah, is that obviously being talented and skilled and working on your craft is one thing, but is it also something that people should be looking out for, that the idea of like you said, you are the product, you need to sell
Yes. Yes.
kind of yourself to a degree? Because I've heard stories of people saying, oh, well, this guy, he's such a good writer or whatever, but he just hasn't got a clue about having conversations, networking, putting himself in positions to have interactions. He just kind of, he's really good at storytelling, but just doesn't have anything else.
Well, you have to be able, or have somebody, an agent or a manager, who can pitch it and sell it if you can't. But the amazing thing is, because I'm a writer as well, so I know both, and that's one way I kept myself sane when I wasn't working as an actor, was I was always writing, trying to get a script made, trying to get this project done, whatever I could do, but you have to be able to pitch it in one sentence. Uh, the real breakdown for me, Aaron, in the process is, it's weird, but people, producers and directors, they don't really like to read, and storytelling is reading. If it ain't on the page, it ain't on the stage. So the script is where everything starts. And the breakdown is that all the talent agents, they have readers, and the readers are 20-year-old USC film students. So their depth of knowledge of what they like, so they're the first barrier to getting the script done, is, do they like it? And will they pass on positive coverage of the script?
Yeah.
And so, to me, is the best producers and the best directors love to read. They're always looking for the script, the story that they want to tell. You know, Hollywood's less about storytelling these days than it is about spectacle. Marvel movies and this and that. But back in the 80s and 90s, there were lots of independent films that told human stories and human dramas and, little movies, and you could get screens. But now the way the product is delivered is completely changed. The way it's shot is completely changed. Now the thing is, they like you to self tape yourself, right? So you get the material, you put yourself on tape, and you send it in. You're not even getting into the room, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a breakdown as well, because you need to be able to be in the room. I mean, it's in person, you can feel the power, right? You can deliver, you can, as I like to refer to it, you can shake their peaches because you really let them know how powerful your voice is, or how athletic you are, or, those are hard things to tell on tape. you know I've
Yeah.
always I want to be in the room with the director and the producer and the writer, and answer questions, and work on it. But again, that's really not how the modern world revolves. And for a time, in my last few years in Hollywood, there was a big thing of, do you have a big Facebook following? How many fans do you have on Instagram? These things don't matter. They're ultimately, it's not going to help you sell a film. People aren't going to run out and see a movie just because you're in it. It has to be a good movie. So, they're concerned about bottom line, but they're killing the bottom line by not really going through the work of creating the story.
It's funny you say that actually, because I have some friends who are producers in the UK, and they they work with some pretty big directors from this side of the globe, and they were saying, like, during the pandemic and things like that, they had a lot of, obviously it was all Zoom meetings, and they spend a lot of time, like they go to the Berlin Film Festival and pitch ideas and get scripts and different things, and then to have to do that for several years over Zoom, and they were like, it felt so cold and so disconnected that like nobody seemed to pick up any project. Nobody, it just was like so impersonal compared to like actually being in a room.
Oh yeah, no, it's well, it is. It's antiseptic. It's it's not the way to do it. uh, I'm old school. I like, again, you're bringing a team together, right? One person can't do it alone. Like when Kobe Bryant was playing for the Lakers, I'm a big Lakers fan, and I
Hmm.
loved Kobe. and he was great, but he had still had to have the other four guys out there. He still needed the other eight guys on the bench. You know, I mean, you can't win it all by yourself. You got to have that team. And I've always likened it to a good basketball team. You got to be able to pass the ball to each other. I mean, it's as I said, collaborative. So you
I don't
need
know
every,
what you're. Yeah, I get what you're saying, and like you said, you met Adam when they had greenlit Psycho Cop Returns.
yeah,
I don't know what your your opinion on it is, but in from an audience standpoint, it seems to have done quite well again.
yes,
Uh, it leans even more, I think, into like the kind of dark comedy. It's quite
sure.
self-aware. Um, when that released, I don't know what it was like, monetarily, how they done financially. What was the decision where there was no trilogy? There was no, especially if there was a 5-part deal thrown out at the start. They obviously saw. I know, there was a financial reason for doing that as well, where, like you said, they don't want to renegotiate if the thing does really well. But obviously, they must have seen something with the idea that they thought, you know what, we could turn this into a pretty decent IP in a franchise.
Well, what happened is Cassian Elwes, Carrie Elwes' brother, you know Carrie from Princess Bride and innumerable films.
Yeah.
Good, good actor, handsome guy. His brother was the executive producer, and he changed careers. He quit producing films in 93, 94, and he went to work at the William Morris Talent Agency as the independent film coordinator agent. And so for 15 years, he worked at William Morris. And then when he quit, he started producing again. He produced Dallas Buyers Club with Matthew McConaughey, which he won an Oscar for Best Picture, a $6 million film. So he's back in the producing game. He's worked, I believe he just did a film with Nick Vallelonga, who is Mike in Psycho Cop Returns. And they just did a musical together. So that's the guy I got to talk to. But that's why the third one wasn't made, because he quit producing. He became a talent agent.
Was there any like, I guess that he stepped away, but were any of the rest of you guys because again, I don't know what, like, what conversations are like behind closed doors, but I can't help but feel like maybe that would have been the time to try and strike and be like, keep we need to do this again.
Well, if it had been up to me, we would have done one right away, but again, I didn't write the material, and no script was commissioned. And again, it was my jealousy that made me write a third one. My ownership of it, I thought, yeah, because I kept getting fans contacting me going, where's the next one? We want the third one. What's happening? Where is it? And so finally I said, I got to take care of this. And I must say, it was a pleasure to write. Again, a lot of it is connected to the Book of Revelations in the Bible. About the end times and the beast and the pale rider, the pale horse. That all that symbology, and so I was going for a bit more old school telling.
Would you say that's the biggest push now, especially, all these years later, the idea of finishing out the trilogy? Will that be your best I don't know, bartering tool to be like, have you guys seen like the reaction online and how much of a following we still have 30 years later?
It's funny, the when the Blu-ray came out, the reviews were amazing. I mean, and we had waited 25 years for those reviews. When it was first released, Entertainment Weekly, I mean, just killed us. I mean, they hated it, and you get good and bad. I mean, that's the nature of the beast. Some people are going to love it, some people are going to hate it. That as long as you're making people feel something, good or bad, then you've done your job. I mean, you can't please everyone. So, what's the old line? You got to please yourself. So, I think that would be a good way to finish it off. But again, son of Psycho Cop.
I know, right? Because I feel like there's a lot of mileage left in the
Oh,
tank here.
in the character for sure, or
Yeah, like
in the archetype. I mean, uh,
yeah,
especially in today's modern world.
there really is. Like, and when I see some of these other franchises get reimagined and things like that, and
Yeah.
they have kind of successful. Like a couple of years back, there was a Leprechaun reboot or whatever you want to call it,
Oh, I remember him.
which was quite well received. And there's
Uh,
always been talk online. I don't know if you've ever seen any of this. Like, there's like Psycho Cop gets mentioned, obviously, Maniac Cop, like versus movies. There's like
sure.
Wishmaster, we have Leprechaun, and all those.
Yeah.
At the time back then, was that like I don't know, like in the zeitgeist? Like, were you guys aware of like those other characters? And I don't know if it's like a fan thing. It's just interesting for them to come up with like, oh, well, what if Maniac Cop was against Psycho Cop, or what if they
Oh,
teamed up in a movie, and what if?
yeah. No, I've heard it. I've heard it all. I've read some of it, but a funny story, Aaron, was my next door neighbor was a graphic designer and really talented one. He worked at Sony Records as well. Did their album covers and very creative. And one day I walked. We shared a front porch together in our Spanish bungalow in Hollywood. And I walked into his apartment. We always kept our doors open. And I walked in and I saw Chucky, the doll.
Yeah.
And I said to him, this is when the first one came out. I'm like, what is that? He goes, it's Chucky. And I'm like, Chucky? It's a doll. It goes, oh, he's a killer. Well, cut to years later, I was doing a low budget uh, uh, it was called Turbulent Skies with Casper Van Diem and Brad Dourif, the actor who
Yep.
voiced Chucky. And of course, Brad Dourif is a world class actor. I mean, his first film was One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. He was nominated for an Academy Award. He was Billy, the stutterer in the film. And so we were talking about Chucky, and I was telling him about the doll, and he said, I made more money playing Chucky than all the other stuff that I did, everything. And I'm like, well, good for you, So I mean, but the irony of that, it is not lost on the actor. Is you can never predict how something's going to land. All you can do is give it your best, and then hope that everything else falls into place.
Would you say that the horror community are probably the most supportive of actors and creators in that space? Like, I mean, I see some of the conventions. I've been to a few in the States, but even over here now and in the UK and stuff, Ireland is getting their first horror convention for the first
Oh, are
time
you
in like 10 years, I think, since the last
okay?
one. Because there's such a response where, they want to see the guy who voiced Chucky. They want to see Joe Vickers. They want to see who played. And it's funny because a lot of times it's not even people who maybe the studios would consider relevant or social media
Sure.
popular. It's movies from 30 years ago, 25 years ago, 40
Yeah.
years ago. It's always those guys that seem to show up on the convention circuits, and they're always the ones with the biggest lines.
Yeah. Well, you know, yes. There's two other categories that I would say that are just as rabid: Star Trek fans, and I was on a TV show called The Office, and
Oh, of
so
course. Yeah.
The Office fans are even more. I mean, those conventions are insanely attended. Uh, I'm getting ready to do a couple more of those shows. I haven't done very many horror shows, but I just signed with a management team that handles that, and so I think we will do some more horror film conventions because the material. People are collectors; they want the autographed photo and the picture. And so I haven't, like I said, it's a rare thing for people to have that material. So I'm going to go out and provide some.
Do you know what you probably get? somebody at some point is definitely going to mention this, or I don't know if it's a convention that does it or the guys who deal with it, the potential for it. And I've seen it happen more and more again. I don't know if you're familiar with Clint Howard's role as the ice cream man. He's coming to a convention in the UK now, and this is the second year, I think. And they finally got it over the line where they're offering like an in costume photo where he's in his
Yeah.
character's costume. I'm sure that you would probably get that at some point where you'll be asked to do that.
Yes, I have been asked to do that, and I was resisting it because I didn't, I only want to put the outfit on when I'm playing it, when I'm out in public. Although when I was in Cannes at the film festival, I was walking around the streets wearing that. The French police were coming up trying to see if it was a real gun, and all that kind of stuff. So I was walking through the old part of town. I think they thought the German SS was back in back in France because they've got the big boots and the leather and the whole bit. Um,
Uh,
so
Go
I'm
ahead.
not unopposed to it. When I do the office conventions, for instance, I wear the Bob Vance outfit because
Yeah, yeah.
people want to take the picture with Bob Vance. It's not Bobby Ray Shafer. They want Bob Vance, so I give it to them. I it's 20 years I've been Bob Vance now, so that's a long time to,
And it's crazy. It's another one of those things that doesn't seem to be dying down. That's got to be quite gratifying
yes,
personally and like behind the scenes too.
yes.
And it's I know like you said like you try and remove ego and stuff, but it's got to feel good inside, right? To know that a lot of these roles you're associated with are held in such high regard by the fans all
It's
this time
uh
later.
it's a blessing because I can make people happy just by taking a photo or just by signing something or telling a joke. I always have positive fan interactions. I appreciate the fans, especially for The Office. I mean, when I was on the show, when I first started, that show was supposed to be canceled. I mean,
Yeah.
it wasn't gonna make it. And look where it turned into. It's getting bigger and bigger every year. It's not, you know, it's not less, it's more. I mean, that's the crazy thing because we weren't that big a hit when we were on the air. We were in the middle of the pack. We were on Thursday nights and we lost every Nielsen's ratings to Grey's Anatomy, which is a show about a hospital, and we could never beat them. They were always in the top five, and we were always in the 40s or the 50s audience size, right? But it caught on because the humor is timeless, the characters resonate, and so it's really been a blessing and a gift, and I treasure it. I'm very lucky to have been a small part of a big thing. So I'm grateful for it. Although at the time, my competitive instinct, I want more, 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 more Bob Vance, but I just had to take what I got and accept it. And so as it turns out, I mean, I have a closet over here filled with probably 75 different Bob Vance t-shirts. And behind me, you see all the hats
Yeah.
and and I collect them because, well, if not me, then who?
It's speaking of that, do you get much, especially with the role of Bob Vance in The Office? What are the interactions like in public? I don't know, what it's like where you are right now, but I can't help but feel like The Office is so in the zeitgeist that like even people who think that they're not into film and TV and stuff will have seen the show and loved the show. And it's like, do you get a lot of just interactions when you're just at the grocery store or you're like out anywhere, people going, "Hey, wait a second, you're that guy."
Yeah, no, some, but I live in a very non-Hollywood place. I live in West Virginia now, in the hills, and the population's older here, and it's not so fan driven. Uh, Although an when your office fan spots you, I mean they're coming up. Uh, I just learned recently that there's a restaurant about 30 miles from here that at the last Thursday of every month they have the office trivia night. Well, And people were like, "Well, you should just go." And so I think I'm going to pop in on them.
That'd be just. Could you imagine? Somebody needs to record the reaction if you just
Oh
arrive
yeah.
in.
No, I'll have a cameraman. But recently I went to South Carolina and did 3 trivia nights in Charleston and Greenville. And they were sold out. I mean, there were hundreds of people there, and it stunned me how much all these people knew about the show. They knew everything. And I mean, I don't know that much about it. I'm not a fan, so I haven't watched it, 20
Mhm.
times like everybody else has. But uh, I went to Scranton, Pennsylvania, where the show is set, to throw out a baseball at the New York Yankees AAA farm club there, and it was sold out night. It was office night, and I was the guest of honor, and I was sitting there signing autographs for 7 innings, and it was all kids. It was all
Mm.
12-year-old, 13-year-old, and they would come up and hand me their item and I sign it. And I didn't know that the fan base was kids now, because when we were on TV, it was 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds. But now, I mean, it's kids and they would go, I binge watched it. I've watched it 10 times, the whole series, that's 187 episodes. So, the audience has expanded. And here in the States, I mean, it's on constantly. I was watching it last night. I'm a big fan of it now because everybody was so good. I mean, that was a true ensemble. And of course, we had our Kobe Bryant with Steve Carell, who's a comedy genius, really. I mean, so, I mean, he was so gifted in that role. I marvel at it now how wonderful he was.
Yeah, and it's another one of those things, and I kind of likened it to, especially from hearing the story you said about, when it was on TV, it didn't maybe do what was originally intended or whatever, and then it's like just year on year just finding a new audience, a new
Yeah,
audience, a new audience, and retaining fans. It's not like it's just moving from one to the other, it's keeping that fan base. And I liken it to a lot of horror where things might have missed the intended mark at the time, and then just over time the community just picks it up and picks it up and picks it up, and it appears on TikToks and it appears on Instagram and it appears on
yes,
here and there, and it seems to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Like I even, I've seen it here when The Office might come back on like the Irish and UK Netflix, and they drop like the entire show, and then for the next 6 months, it's at number one in like
sure.
Netflix's number one selected thing. And I think just even that being there, obviously for the younger audience, then they come on, they see what's this show that's number one on Netflix every day. I turn it on, and then they get exposed to it, and it just becomes like a domino effect.
When it was on Netflix here, I think it had 4 times as many views as the number 2 show, which was Friends, which ran for 11 years or 12 years. So I mean, downloadable minutes. It was billions of minutes streaming that. And there was this big fuss. All the people were outraged that Netflix lost that because it was acquired by NBC to put on their streaming channel, Hulu, and what Peacock.
Yeah.
So, it was funny because someone wrote Craig Robinson, who played Daryl on the show, and said, "Can you tell Netflix to keep the show?" I'm like, an actor is going to tell Netflix,
Yeah.
this $900 million deal. No, stop it. Stop the 900 million.
Does how does that, like, obviously without getting into it too much, I don't know how much you can say or not say, but with things like Netflix and places like that, is there residuals, or
Oh
does
yeah.
everybody just get cut out?
Well, no, it depends. Netflix is famous for not paying residuals, but those are for the shows that they're producing. When they buy product, Screen Actors Guild has certain rules about residuals. That was the big fuss in 2008. The strike, the actor strike, was the producers were trying to get rid of residuals. They didn't want to pay them. The old residual standard was that after 7 years, they didn't have to pay it. That was it. It was done. So, for instance, shows like the Brady Bunch or the Partridge Family, after 7 years, those actors, that was it. Now the producer owns all the money. But at that time, there was no platform for those shows to play. Once they were off
Yeah.
network TV, they were done. But now all the shows live on forever. They're all playing at somewhere at some time on some nostalgia TV show, and they live forever now. The product from the 50s and 60s and 70s is still airing.
Yeah, it's funny. I spoke with John Harrison yesterday, who was famous for working with George Romero, and he worked on Tales from the Dark Side and a lot of those
Yeah,
things. And he spoke about, he was telling me a story about, they were a couple of years back, they were trying to close down Turner Classic Movies, that the uh the TV channel or whatever they have, where they just
yeah,
play, and they have that thing where one day is just all 40s movies and another day is just all movies with this actor in them. And supposedly there was so much outrage from the audience that they actually said, actually, do you know what? We didn't realize there was as much interest, and they just left it alone. So I think it does show the staying power of a lot of these shows and a lot of these movies. I have a couple of final questions I want to ask you before
sure.
I let you go. Uh, After Psycho Cop Returns comes out, I know there was no more movies made, and obviously since then, I think the goal now would be to see your script. But was there another script for a trilogy that you ever heard about, or had they not even thought past number two?
No, not that I know of. I don't believe that anybody's ever written one. I've never seen it. I mean, if someone wrote it, they would have to get it to me.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
So no, the number three is written by yours truly.
What kind of tone can people expect? More of the same? Or are we going to go serious? Or are we still going to have that humor and that kind of like
Oh,
quippy one
yeah.
liners?
Oh, yeah. Oh, no. No, no, no. There's a a quip. There's a there's a one liner coming every time. I mean, there has to be. That's the nature of the character, and so I wouldn't. It'd be like changing Rocky Balboa.
Yeah.
Rocky's always Rocky.
Yeah. Yeah. True.
Even when he hung up the gloves and became a manager or a trainer, he's still Rocky. So you got to keep the core character, but there is a bit more somberness to it. Again, I want to go for the old school scares. The pop up, the door, all the things that make horror great.
I meant to ask you earlier when you said about writing. Was that something that was just self taught?
Well, I studied a little bit of it in college, but yes, screenwriting, especially, uh, requires it's a different writing discipline than any other type because it's a format. You know, uh, each page is equal to 1 minute of screen time, right? So there's a reason the script is laid out the way it is, and you have to. Screenplays are about showing, not telling, right? Theater is yep, 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 talking, and screenplays should be pictures, right? We see it. We don't need to talk about it. The best films, for instance, one of my favorite actors is Steve McQueen of all time, right?
Hmm.
Love him. And when he would go through a script, he was trying to eliminate dialogue. He didn't want to say it. He wanted to show it. So he would say, I don't need to say this. I can just do it with a look. I mean, so that's the power of cinema is, showing, not telling. So I think a lot of films are way too talky. I mean, we don't need to have things explained. We need to see, right? So that skill, I mean, Hemingway couldn't do it. Faulkner couldn't do it. Fitzgerald couldn't do it. The great American writers who tried it, it's a different animal, and so it's very difficult because it has to be compelling to the reader at the same time that you're locked into this format of show, not tell. So, it's not an easy thing to do.
Do you get a lot of time now to watch movies or shows, or do you enjoy that? And if so, do you have any movies that I always refer to them as comfort movies, but maybe something that you revisit more often than others, whether it be any genre, but if there was a horror movie that sticks out as like one that, yeah, I've seen that definitely more than others.
Well, I mostly watch Turner Classic Movies. I like Robert Mitchum, and I like John Wayne and Lee Marvin and Charles Bronson. I like the old school American tough guys. Um, so Mitchum mostly. I mean, I watched Out of the Past the other day. I mean, I love the noir era. I always watch noir films on TCM. Um, you know, I like the good guy, bad guy stuff, the tough guy stuff, that genre. Um, in terms of horror films, I don't really watch that much of the modern stuff. Like I said, I find it too gory and too bloody. You know, I like The Omen, for instance. When
Mm.
that's on, I'll watch that again. That to me is so terrifying. It still is. Funny story is when it first came out, I went and watched it. And it was scary, right? So I had this girlfriend who was a little on the kind of unhinged side. And I thought, let's go see how she reacts to it. And so the scene when Gregory Peck is in there and he's clipping the kid's hair to find the 666, and you know that nurse is coming in. You just know it, and you're waiting for it. So I was watching her watch the film, and she's grasping the arms of the chair. And when the nurse comes in, she screams and she lashes out with her fist and hits me right in the throat. And I couldn't talk for 2 or 3 days because she nailed me because she was it was wrecking her. But I watched that, and every now and then The Exorcist. I mean, there's really evil associated with that film. There were people who died making that movie on those stairs in D.C. I mean, everybody felt. I mean, when Linda Blair's head spinning
I
around.
know, right?
I mean, it's still as effective now as it was when it was released in 72 or 73, whenever it was. And of course, I wasn't allowed to go see it then. I was too young. But
It's
when I,
it's funny you mentioned that. I'm actually wearing an Exorcist t-shirt at the minute while you're talking about that.
I'm actually wearing a Psycho Cop t shirt at the minute.
Oh wow, that's
See,
much better than my one.
there you go. Uh, I like the Psycho Cop t shirt. There's one in the closet there. It says, "Let's stay home and cuddle and watch Psycho Cop." Which
um,
I never thought as a movie to cuddle to, but I guess it could be.
I mean, look, I've heard stranger things, to be honest. You mentioned Turner Classic and stuff like that. There's definitely a staying power there as well. I think with a lot of the older era, even further back than your work. I mean, for
Sure.
example,
Oh yeah.
I visit Orlando a lot, and
Yeah.
I spend a lot of time in Universal, and like they have the horror makeup show, which
Right.
and people that are fans of that stuff. Go to that show several times a day, and it's the same show every time, but it's they harken back to, you've mentioned a lot of them today, the old school horror guys, the old
Yeah.
school makeup guys, and the stuff
Yeah.
they had to go through for their performances. And there's something I think about that time and about what those people put into, not just in horror, in general,
Yeah.
into those films, that maybe doesn't resonate with some of the more modernized things that we see nowadays. And I don't want to hate on it, but like even stuff like some of the Marvel movies and things, they're so over sterilized and so over CG that it's just very
Yeah.
hard to get into it.
Yeah. Well, here's I was watching on Easter. I was watching Ben Hur, the Charlton Heston version of Ben Hur, the chariot race. You could not CGI that and have it be as great as. I mean, I watched that and I go, how in the world did they do it? I mean, I was listening to a clip of Charlton Heston talking about how they had to train the horse team to jump over the fallen the chariots and the horses that had gone down. Is that easy? No, it is not. So the funny thing was the golf club that I would belong to in LA. I got to hang out with his son, Fraser Heston. And so, I talked about him all the time. Heston, it's not appreciated by the modern fans. They don't really even know who he was, but he was one of the greatest of the great. And those films all hold up. I mean, there's one after another. I mean, uh, there's a great Ben-Hur. They spent 9 months shooting that, and he wrote a book, an actor's life, or he kept a journal about when he was in Rome and working and making that movie. And of course, he was leading the life of a international movie star. I mean, it was much different then than it is now, I think. uh, Even with all the social media and all that stuff, I mean, these were still huge stars, but they were huge stars because they were talented. And back to Universal, one of the most impressive things I ever did was whenever I would get a job at Universal and I would go to the wardrobe, which is a 7-story building on the back lot of Universal Hollywood. It's full of all the costumes from the 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s. I mean, it's all in there. And if you've been around uh, old costumes, they have a certain smell. You go in there and you smell it. But Universal, I mean, they've been how long have they been around? So they keep all that stuff. Although they did sell a bunch of stuff from The Office. They did an auction. People bought Michael's suit and they bought Bob Vance's jacket and that sign up there, the Vance refrigeration sign, that was smuggled. Excuse me. There were two of them, and I got one of them. But the prop guy, called me up and he said, "Hey, I got one of the Vance refrigeration signs. Do you want it?" And I'm like, "Do I want it? Of course I
Yeah.
want it." And he said, "Yeah, okay, here's the deal. You got to take me out to lunch and you got to be in my movie." So I said, "Okay, I'll do both. Where do you want to eat?"
Yeah, and like stuff like that. I do have some props from some movies, but
Yeah,
it's big business with some of those. It's just crazy.
yeah, oh yeah,
Um, yeah, it's and especially for certain horror properties, some of the older stuff, and then like you said, like things like The Office, like because the community is so invested, I think
yeah,
it just drives those prices into the moon.
yeah,
On the mention of props, did you ever keep anything from Psycho Cop?
yeah. Of course I did. A funny story. I got to keep the leather jacket from the first one, and the wardrobe girl thought that she was going to keep it, and I said, "No, no, 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 no. You'll have to fight me for it." So that didn't work out in her behalf. But on the second one, I have the badge. It's right back here on this shelf, and the producer called up and he said, "Hey, Bobby, have you seen the badge?" I'm like, "Huh? What?" No, what badge? You mean the 666 badge? Of course, I've still got that. I'm confessing it now. I got it. Come and get it.
You were very clever and forward thinking because I hear so many stories of back then people just they don't take anything, they don't really, they think, oh, whatever, and the stuff either goes missing or it gets thrown away or people bring it home and forget about it somewhere. And
Yeah.
I hear about that stuff more often. So you were way ahead of the time with taking some of that stuff, the more important stuff, might I say.
Well, you got to have a memento. I mean, who else does it belong to? The production can pay the, because they don't buy it. Typically, they rent it, and they have to return it. So then they have to buy it if you don't if you don't give it back. But on The Office, you at the end of the show, they came to us and said, "Do you want to buy? They'll sell you at cost the wardrobe or whatever." But I didn't really need any of Bob's wardrobe because, to be honest, I wore a lot of my own stuff. Always did because the shoes especially. I always wore my own shoes because I'm size 13, and there's nothing worse than breaking in new shoes.
Mm.
By the end of the day, your feet are hamburger, especially if you're running and fighting and doing all that stuff. But No, I mean it. I'm pretty sure Sharon Stone, I read recently, or I saw her do an interview where she has the white dress from the Michael Douglas film, the famous scene where she spreads her legs and she's not wearing any panties, but that little white dress, there were two of them. And so she managed to snag both of those. And I guess for instance, on The Office, I wore during the Fun Run episode when they gave us all T-shirts that said Michael Scott's cure race for the cure, curing rabies. And I said, I'm not wearing that. I'm not wearing a Dunder Mifflin shirt. I'll wear Vance Refrigeration. And the wardrobe girl says, well, Mr. Daniels has to approve that. And so I said, okay, but I'm wearing it. so, so I did give that away. I gave that to a charity to auction off, but there was only one of them, and
Mm.
of course Greg came back and said, "Oh no, he can wear his Vance Refrigeration shirt." So it was in the show, but there was only one of them, and so it was mine too, and I should have kept it, but I was feeling generous.
I mean, that's probably a good way. I hear horror stories when people say, "Oh, I gave it to somebody or somebody took it and it disappeared and ended up in the trash and all this stuff." That just makes me cringe. Um,
Yeah.
what
Hey,
what
oh, go ahead.
go ahead.
No, I was going to say, hey, I think it's time for you, Aaron, to make a horror film.
I would love to. I would love to make a horror film. I'll be
Well,
totally honest with you.
right.
I've spent the last good few years having a lot of conversations with a lot of people, but not yet. But I hope at some point before I go out in the pine box or wherever I end up that I will have done it.
Well, let me give you a couple tips. One, it's the villain is the most important thing, right? There has to be a reason for the mayhem. So come up with an original good villain. And then all you need is final draft and start writing every day. Write 3 pages a day. And in 30 days, you've got 90 pages and now you've got a script. So it's easy. It,
I think that's why I asked some questions about writing and stuff like that. Were you self taught? Because I don't know whether, and I mentioned this a few times to people, and I've got like differing opinions back. I maybe have done that thing that a lot of people do, like that analysis paralysis, in the sense of like, I bought screenwriting workbooks and I bought this book and I bought that book and I've listened to this podcast and I've listened to this thing and that thing. And then it gets to the stage where I feel like I'm studying the craft more than actually doing anything.
Right. Well, again, it's very simple. The script itself, especially in Final Draft, it'll help you format it correctly, right? So you won't be worrying about format. But what does the camera see next? That's it. So that's the shot. What does the camera see next? And of course, you need parallel train tracks because you have to have something to cut to. You can't just
Yes.
stay right. You can't just stay on the same train can't be driving the thing the whole time. You got to be able to go here, come back here, go here. And so, you know, it's pretty simple. You've studied enough film to know what happens. Somebody drives up to a house, they get out, they go in, something happens in there. Then they come out, they drive away. Then where do you go? Right. So it's pretty basic. It really hasn't changed much since we started doing it. The only thing is the style changes or the characters change. But, you know, again, 3 pages a day, always keep going forward. And after 30 days, you've got 90 pages. And that's what you need for horror is 90 pages. That's 90 minutes. Longer than that, I mean, it's death to comedy and horror.
Yeah.
Drama and action are two genres that you can do 2 hours. But distributors don't want 2 hour films. They want 90-minute films because they get to show it more times, more screenings. So, it's not that well. Oh, you should watch the movie I made called Dick Dickster.
Oh yeah, I've seen it.
You've seen it?
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Of
Well,
course.
oh, I didn't
Who
know.
hasn't?
Oh, well, a lot of people have it. But that's a send up of Hollywood. And of course, we're referencing Psycho Cop the whole time in that film. I don't know how many references there are, but that's, again, doing a mockumentary. I shot that in 6 days. Okay, but I had very talented cast, and I had three cameras going at once. And I don't care if they see each other because it's a mockumentary. So I don't have to worry about, when you're making a film, you have to worry about crossing the axis and all that kind of technical stuff and, how depth of field and all that. But when you're shooting video cameras, that's the modern film is video. So uh, there's some adjustments to be made, especially in horror, is the lighting in those. It's very difficult to light with video. I mean, more difficult than film. You get a lot more in the shadows and the light tricks that you can do with film. I mean, everybody knows that. That's why Orson Welles and all those people always love black and white. Because the shadows.
Would you say that that's probably key to the project? Because so my initial idea was I planned to try and shoot some shorts as like a proof of concept, I guess,
Right. Yeah.
like a mini kind of a trailer kind of thing to use that over here because we have especially now we have a quite a good like the Irish Film Board. They do support a lot of up and comers, but they
Yeah.
do kind of seem to lean more towards, can you show me something as
Oh,
well
yeah.
as having an idea? Like I need to actually see like kind of what you're going for. Um, the issue I found that I was having, and lots of people have mentioned to me, you look at somebody like Sam Raimi when he made Evil Dead, like they didn't have dollies, they didn't have this, they didn't have that, they didn't have lights, they didn't have anything. It was just a bunch of people who were really passionate about making a movie, and that's why it resonated, and that's why it was what it was. I find it increasingly difficult though to find people that I'm not saying they're not out there, but that care as much that they're willing to kind of, I don't want to say do whatever, but like a lot of people now will go, okay, well, how much money you give me? Okay, that's not enough. Okay. How much money do I get for this? Okay, well, that's not enough of that. Okay, what can I do with it? And it's like, well, I can't, like that's the whole point of we're trying to get this thing off the ground. I
Well, I definitely think that a 5 to 10 minute short to prove your concept. But the key things, of course, are the lights. You have to be able to light it correctly and act it correctly, which the great directors are the ones who can cast correctly, right? I mean, Greg Daniels, who cast The Office, that was his particular talent, was casting. Because if you get the right actors, they'll deliver what you're looking for, what you need to sell the film. So if you're trying to make a horror film, you need to be spooky, you need to be moody, you need the shadows, you need the scare, even in the short. That's the thing, is you've got to have a jump cut scare in there or two. So it can be done. And you say no dolly, that's a shopping cart. you know
yeah.
Pull back slowly, right? A steady cam. I mean, you rent a steady cam. I mean,
Mhm.
you need a good operator if you don't operate cameras. But your vision is, what you tell them to get you on the tape. So go for it. Write it. Uh, raise the money. Give, there's all kinds of ways to finance now. You put, I forget what they call them, but people, there's crowdfunding sites. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
you can do it that way. I mean, I've had many people tell me, we'll crowdfund Psycho Cop 3. And I'm like, no, let's get enough money to do it correctly.
That's instantly what I thought of. I was like, if somebody doesn't play ball, just crowdfund it because I know the audience would love that. What keeps you motivated and inspired nowadays? Like you feel like uh still extremely energetic about everything. Like you mentioned, moving away from Hollywood and
Yes.
kind of retiring, but you still seem quite motivated and quite inspired.
Well, I'm writing my book right now. It's called What Line of Work Are You In, Bob? Which is the famous line from The Office, my very first scene. And so it's about every job that I ever had in my life. And it's funny because when you contacted me, what portion of the book am I writing right now? Psycho Cop.
Wow. It's really funny. After this, I was literally going to say to you, and I'm going to keep this in on purpose. I was literally going to say to you, have you ever considered the idea of writing a book?
Yes,
That's
I'm.
crazy.
No, it's funny. I've been going slow on it because you know, there's no deadline. So deadlines are motivators, right? I've got to have it by now. So there's a publisher that contacted me not too long ago, and he said we'd like that book by September. So I've got a
Whoa.
long way. I've got a long. I got a lot of jobs to write about, but it's it's more a tale of not just the work, but also the people that I've met. I mean, David Bowie and Marlon Brando and Robert Duvall and Patricia Neal and Jerry West and all these encounters that I had in Hollywood and my interactions with them. And so it's I've always been a guy who was looking forward. I didn't never like to look back, you know. Uh, but now I have to spend time reliving the past, which, believe me, is really wreaking havoc with my dreaming life. The other night, I mean, I was under pressure to shoot a scene in the office, and John Krasinski and I, we were struggling to do it. I mean, it was really wild. But so when you spend time, thinking about, wait, this happened, that happened, it's unusual for me to do that. But doing the shows, I go out and do a few of those every few months, and so that keeps me busy. I hate to travel now, though. I must admit, I'm not really big on flying, but you have to. And in the book, and maybe getting Psycho Got 3 off the ground. And then there's another project that I really want to do called Jim Stone Highway Patrol, which is a very patriotic film about a highway patrolman taking down some terrorists.
Oh, nice. So
Yeah,
we're nowhere near the end yet then.
no, no, no. But again, I already wrote that, so I just never sold it. But I've got some interest in it now, and because the times have changed, Uh, so we'll see what happens with either of us. But I won't play Jim. I'll be the old captain, the wise old captain.
Is there anywhere that people, listening, whether they're a fan of yours already or maybe discovering some of your stuff for the first time, is there anywhere that you would like to, I don't know, push people to or direct people where they can maybe just keep an eye on what might be coming or announcements?
Well, I'm on Facebook, uh, but my friend limit is maxed out right now. So, but you can follow me there. Also, I kind of sporadically put something on Instagram, but I'm not really, you know, I don't have to do that anymore. I mean, I don't have to promote anything anymore. I mean, so when I was in it every day, you had to promote, but yeah, I would just love everybody to watch Dick Dixter, and that really is my statement on Hollywood.
That the links for everybody listening, whether you're looking at this on YouTube, Rumble, or Spotify podcast or any other podcast platform, all the links will be down below in the description to all of that stuff anyway. Um I would normally ask why horror, but I feel like your your interests and like your skill and talent kind of spreads a lot further than that. So um I was gonna ask then as well, what does the role of Joe Vickers or what has it meant to you now all these years later? So I would like to ask that, like, what does the role of Joe mean to you now looking back? And then maybe just to finish it, why this medium, why film, whether it's directing, writing, acting, why that in particular?
Well, it means Joe Vickers was a life changer. And, some parts are just gigs, some, some roles are, forgettable, obviously. There's a lot of them on my resume, but some things resonate. And that one did because it changed my life. And, I'm known for it. And so I embrace it. And why film and television? Because I'm a storyteller. And storytellers have always been revered ever since men started drawing in caves and people telling stories around the fire, about the hunt, So I'm a dreamer, and that's what storytellers are. We're society's dreamers, and our societies live through our dreams and our stories, and that's what connects us. And so I'm proud to have been able to have a small part of it. And, people like some of it and hate some of it. But again, we made them feel something.
Well, that's and someone told me that a long time ago. It's like when people just don't care, that's when you've got a problem.
Well,
Um,
when they're ambivalent, right? I don't think they can do without it. I mean, you know, this is a true story. I made a little film back in the day, 1987. It's called Hollywood Shuffle. It's a very famous film because Robert Townsend was a black actor who didn't want to play pimps and drug dealers and the nasty guys. He wanted to be a superhero, but those parts weren't available to him, right? So the movie was famous because he made it for $100,000 on his credit card. He advanced all his credit cards, and that's how we made it. But then it became a hit, and I'm proud of that. But I realized it took me 30 years to learn the lesson from that film was to make your own movie. So that's why I made Dick Dixter. I finally went, make your own movie. Stop waiting for somebody to give you the part. Make the part. And so that's why I say to you, Aaron, make the movie.
that's I
It's
love that advice.
it's in you. You just start writing it.
Yeah, yeah, I love
And
that
and
advice.
then I'll read it. I'll read it when you're done with it. You can
That
send it
deal,
to me.
deal, deal. We'll make a deal on that
All
one.
right. Done.
Robert, it's been fantastic. It's genuinely been a pleasure chatting to you from a personal standpoint, from a really selfish standpoint. Other than the fact that I know people listening to this will resonate with a lot of what you said and will enjoy. From a personal level, I want to thank you for taking your time and being so gracious with your time. I would love to keep a connection and maybe chat again in the future, and hopefully, if some of these projects get off the ground, we can revisit and have another chat.
Sure. When we're shooting Psycho Cop 3, we'll have you to the set and you can shoot some video while you're there. How's that sound?
I would absolutely love that. That would be a dream for all these years later to be able to do that on Psycho Cop set. That would be crazy. What a wild turn of events.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Aaron. It's a great privilege and pleasure to talk to you. You're very well rounded and knowledgeable in this craft and this genre. And I'm honored to have been a small part of it.
I appreciate that, Robert. And let's do it again. Let's keep in touch. And like I said, for everybody listening, the description to or in the description, all the links to all of that stuff will be down below, so it'll be really easy to find.
See, the only problem is if I hang out with you, I'll start talking in an Irish accent like yours.
I try to tone it down a little bit for people because I've had a lot of people message me and go, I can't understand some of the words. And then I'm like, I feel like I make it worse the more I try to like over pronunciate. It
Well, I
sounds even stranger.
I did a very famous play called Hogan's Goat. Remember what the old women in the drowned Marines would say when cloudbursts beat their fields to slime and the potatoes blackened on the stalks like flesh gone proud. Bad times is right, they'd say, but God is good. What
You know
sin
what?
have we committed?
You know what? That's I've heard so many like different versions of like are people trying to like take off the accent or whatever, and some of them I
Yeah.
think are really like, oh yeah, that was really good, wasn't it? I'm like, no.
No, no. Well, that drives me nutty about Southern accents, because I'm a student of that and I really have a keen ear for it. But, I've done Russian and Irish and, all these different ones. And I like it's very lilting, it's very musical. And so I've always enjoyed it. I got to get to your country to play golf anyway. So
You do.
that's an ambition of mine for sure.
You do. We have a lot of nice golf courses here.
Oh, man.
Like I said, Robert, it's genuinely been a pleasure. I could talk to you for hours and hours more, I'm sure, and I hope
Oh,
that we
yeah.
get the chance to do that again.
Sure, bud.
And like I said, for everybody listening, all the links will be down below in the description. And yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thanks. Wish you all the best, and I can't wait to see what's next.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.